In the heart of the Roman Empire, under the shadow of its grand marble columns, and within the lavish chambers of the emperor's palace, there existed secrets that could not be spoken aloud. The empire, known for its grandeur and military might, hid its darkest and most forbidden rituals behind closed doors. The Roman elite, those who lived in opulence and power, indulged in practices that many would deem unthinkable. But for those in power, it was simply part of the system, a system built on control, dominance, and the manipulation of power. In one secluded villa on the outskirts of Rome, a group of high-ranking officials, soldiers, and senators gathered under the cover of night. At the center of this gathering was a young woman named Livia, a noblewoman by birth, but a servant by choice. She had been recruited into a secret society within the Roman Empire, known only to a select few, the Sisters of Venus. The members of this secret society were tasked with performing sacred rites to honor Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility. But the rituals were not merely about devotion. They were deeply intertwined with power. Sexual rituals used to maintain dominance, control the hearts of the powerful, and secure loyalty among the emperor's most trusted allies. Livia, though a servant, had grown accustomed to her role in these sacred rites. But tonight, she would learn that some secrets were too dark, even for the empire's most powerful. The night of the ritual of the Golden Chalice had arrived. This was the most sacred and secretive of all the rites the Sisters of Venus performed. It was rumored that the ritual allowed the participant to achieve immortality through a combination of sex, power, and divine favor. The ceremony required an offering, a sacrifice in both body and soul, and would bind the individual forever to the emperor's rule. Livia had never seen the ritual in its full intensity before. She had only heard whispers. As the high priestess, Julia, prepared the ceremonial chalice, Livia stood by, observing the congregation of influential men, senators, and generals, all eager to partake in the forbidden practice. Each man in the room had been chosen for his loyalty to the emperor and for his willingness to follow the most depraved orders. The ritual began with the high priestess, Julia, speaking of Venus's power to control the hearts and minds of the people. She drew intricate symbols on the floor with a mixture of sacred oils and blood. The room was heavy with incense, the air thick and heady with lust. As Livia and the other women prepared the offering, she could feel the eyes of the men on her, their gazes intense and possessive. She had always been trained to submit, but tonight something was different. There was an undercurrent of violence in the air, a tension that threatened to crack the illusion of power. As the men took turns drinking from the golden chalice, each one fell into a trance-like state, believing they were receiving divine power. But as Livia watched, she realized something far more sinister was afoot. The men were not simply participating in a religious act. They were being used, manipulated, and turned into mere pawns in the emperor's grand plan to secure his reign forever. The following weeks were filled with rumors of strange occurrences at the emperor's palace. Men who had participated in the ritual began to act oddly, secretive, withdrawn, and obsessed with power. They grew more aggressive, lashing out at those who dared to oppose them. The emperor, once a figure of stability, began to change. His thirst for power deepened, and it became clear that he had learned the true price of the ritual, but it was not just the emperor who had changed. Livia, too, had felt the ritual's effects. She was no longer the same young woman who had entered the temple so many months ago. She had seen things, felt things, things that had altered her very soul. The more she witnessed the depravity around her, the more she felt herself slipping into the darkness, tempted by the power the emperor promised. One evening, she was summoned to the emperor's private chambers. It was a rare invitation, and she knew that the emperor only summoned those who had something to offer. As she entered, she found the emperor seated on his throne, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. He gestured for her to approach, his voice low and commanding. "Livia," he said, "you have proven yourself loyal, but now I need something more. I need you to help me secure my reign. Livia's heart pounded in her chest as the Emperor's words echoed in her mind. She had already given up so much, but now he was asking for something far darker than she could ever have imagined. The Emperor's obsession with the ritual had led him down a dangerous path. He wanted more than just loyalty. He wanted to control the very essence of the Empire, and he was willing to sacrifice anyone who stood in his way. As the Emperor spoke, Livia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had seen enough to know that the price of loyalty in the Roman Empire was far steeper than she could have ever imagined. The rituals, once considered sacred, were now twisted into tools of domination, used to manipulate those in power. Livia had a choice. She could either become a part of this dark new world, or risk losing everything she had fought for. But as she stood before the Emperor, she realized that her soul had already been sold. She had become another pawn in his game, just like the rest. As the Emperor's reign grew more tyrannical, Livia found herself trapped in a web of power, lust, and betrayal. The once glorious Roman Empire was slowly descending into chaos, its foundations eroded by the very people who had sworn to protect it. And in the center of it all stood Livia, the woman who had once been a servant but was now a symbol of the Empire's most dangerous secret. But as the darkness consumed her, Livia began to see through the Emperor's facade. The ritual was not about power. It was about control, manipulation, and the destruction of everything sacred. The Emperor had become a monster, and it was time to put an end to his reign. In a final act of defiance, Livia made a decision that would change the fate of the Roman Empire forever. She would expose the Emperor's dark secrets, no matter the cost. The story of Livia is a dark reminder of how power, when combined with secrecy and manipulation, can corrupt even the most glorious of empires. The Roman Empire, known for its grandeur, had its dark underbelly, where the price of loyalty and devotion was often far too high. Livia's journey serves as a warning that no empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to the destructive forces of greed and corruption. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more secrets that history tried to keep hidden.